Welcome to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting challenging issues, fascinating people, and important events in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. Not everyone has it easy, particularly young people and those with disabilities. Here to talk about an interesting collaboration that will help these two groups are our guests, Elena Dwyre, who is the CEO of Campagna Academy, and Brad Hemingway, a founding board member for Planting Possibilities. Welcome to both of you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Brad, I'm not sure I've seen you this many times with a tie on, so.
I can take it off for you if you'd like.
Well, it looks good on you.
Thank you.
And Elena always looks good, so.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for being on the show today. And I want to start so our audience gets a feel for, not everybody probably knows what Campagna is, and I know they probably don't know what Planting Possibilities is. So a little bit about Campagna. Can you give the little elevator speech on Campagna?
Absolutely. Actually, this year we're celebrating our 66th year anniversary. So we've been around for quite some time. Also known as Hoosier's Boys Town. And when we started accepting girls a few years ago, we changed our name to Campagna Academy.
Makes it easier to change it from Boys Town if you're going to have girls, right?
Absolutely. And we provide the full continuum of care from the most restrictive settings, from private secure residential care to intensive home-based and foster care services.
So all working with kids.
All working with children and their families as well.
Okay. And the residential piece is in Cherville, correct?
Correct.
Right on kind of Route 30 there. And how many kids do you have in residential?
Right now we have about 70 boys and girls living in our campus in various degrees of residential care.
Okay. 11, I think you said 11 to 19 is it kind of the age range you've got?
The youngest child we have now is a boy who just turned 11 years old.
Wow. So give a profile. What kind of kids are at Campagna living there residentially?
Sure. The majority of the children are coming from Lake County. These are children who have been abused and neglected, involved in the system. We also have children who are involved in the juvenile justice system. And the nice thing about Campagna is that we're not just a Lake County provider. We do provide services to the entire state. And right now it's boys and girls. Like I said before, 70 youth live in our campus. We have about 50 youth in our private secure facility, and we also have cottages across our campus.
Private secure, that means they have to...
It's a little bit more structured, very intense, very therapeutic. We have a medical director, psychiatrist, psychologist, all on our campus, employees of Campagna, and available 24/7 working with the children and the families as well.
Right. So these are little tougher kids to work with, I would take it. Okay. Have most of them been adjudicated that are in that setting?
The majority, not all.
Okay.
The other neat thing about Campagna is that we are the only PRTF certified facility in Lake County, and that
I'm going
means
to ask you what that is, right?
Absolutely, psychiatric treatment facility, and that allows families with children who have needs that require residential treatment, that they can place their children in our facility without having to give up parental rights or without having their children be involved in the system.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to Brad then, because we got a good feel for what Campagna does, because this collaboration is kind of interesting, I think. Brad, you saw a need kind of based on your own kid and your own kid's friends and so forth. What was that need that you saw?
Well, as the students age out of the school district at age 22, they go into the job market, and right now that unemployment rate is anywhere between 85 to 90% unemployment.
Now you got to tell us about your son, though.
My son Joseph, he's just turned 21. He's on the autism spectrum, and very high functioning. When you meet him, you don't really notice that, but I just wanted to, for a long time, I knew that we had to do something for him once he aged out. And
so the challenge is, what does a parent do when they've got a kid like this and then they turn 21 and they're finished with school, and your thoughts were?
What's something that he can do, that he can learn a trade, that can go out and in the community be a viable person, wants a job. He wants the same goals and dreams as everyone. It's just, he processes things a little slower, but he's very dedicated, very regimental when it comes to getting the job done.
He's got a lot of good characteristics. Now, why wouldn't you just have him go to the ARC or to Tradewinds or Opportunity Enterprises or some of the facilities that have opportunities for him?
That's a good question. there's a lot of great services out there in Lake County. We just were looking at something that could do more of a job training that could put these individuals back into the job service as opposed to more of a sheltered workshop.
Okay.
So those are the things that we're looking at, and we've settled on building greenhouses to service those individuals here in Lake County.
Okay, and part of this is probably your entrepreneurial nature, I think. You're a business owner and you've been a guy who's kind of started things, so you probably said, I'm not going to have my son do this, we're going to start something here, or is that kind of your thought pattern?
Well, I always knew that he would have to do something, and why not the best advocate for him is my wife and I. So we got involved with some like-minded people when we moved back to Munster about 6 years ago, and we started to talk and get involved with the special education program through Munster and Lake Central, which is Westlake Co-op. And we saw the kids as they aged out, there was nothing for them.
So you work with a number of the other parents and kids, because you've talked to me about your son before, and he's really he's got some friends and buddies and so forth in school. Right. So you were seeing this whole group as having this need, right?
Right. Once they age out, there's just, depending on the economy, there might be, when the economy's good, those employers are having those students work there, individuals work there, but then when the economy turns bad or that business starts going bad, and then the owner says, well, I need new people, and the new person comes in and he cleans house, he doesn't know that person might be the best employee or very consistent employee, but now he's back and now we start from scratch.
Okay. I'm eventually going to get around to the connection here on this collaboration because I think it's kind of interesting. But I wanted people to understand kind of where you're coming from and your motivation in this. Elena, have you professionally been in this whole arena working with young people and children your whole life?
I have, actually, yes. I've had the opportunity to work on the other side of social services, which is more of the for-profit entities, and for the first time I'm now working for a nonprofit. But at the end of the day, the services are the same. Had more of an opportunity to work in community-based in-home services.
So why do you do it?
There's a need, it's an unfortunate situation, but the need is there. And
but there's a need for people to be fed and a need for all kinds of things. Why the need for working with kids? Why does that appeal to you?
I've always enjoyed working with children. Went to school for psychology, went to school for social work. I always knew that was the specific population I wanted to work with. And again, the need is there and the opportunity is significant here in the area, so I was very interested in joining Campagna.
What are the similarities or differences between kind of the group that you work with and the kids that you're talking about? Kids with disabilities and kids who are struggling with their background.
Well, just like Brad said, for us, aging out of the system is always a priority. We see children aging out of the system in foster care, aging out of the system in our own facility, and once that happens, those children are out on the streets. So we are doing everything we can while we have them at Campagna to empower the children, give them the skills and the tools that they need so that when they do leave Campagna, they can be independent and self-sufficient.
So you both have a similar kind of goal here.
Absolutely.
Now, would you even describe the kids that you work with as, do they have a disability in some ways, a social disability because of the background? Is that a fair way to describe that even?
You can, absolutely. One of the things, though, is that our children come from very abusive backgrounds, children that need a lot of support, a lot of mentoring, a lot of therapy, and they come into Campagna for treatment. And we are working right now with children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So for us, it's always been a priority for our children to be independent once they leave our Campagna. So we looked at other options, other partnerships for this specific population, and this is how I came across Brad and Mark Niner from Planting Possibilities. We have partnerships with Work One for other children in our campus, but we wanted something that would be specific to these kids.
So you came across them. You heard about them, or
I did.
What did you hear?
I heard from a good...
I've heard things about Brad too, but you know.
We won't talk about that here,
okay, good.
But from Harry Van de Velde from Legacy.
Okay.
He knew we were going into this new program, which just started about 3 months ago. And he said, you have to meet Mark and Brad. And it was just a perfect fit for us.
So what was the new program you were going into?
This specific program is a residential program, but it's specifically for children with disabilities, intellectual, developmental disabilities, lower IQs. The problem is that the state of Indiana is lacking services for youth with disabilities in general. But this specific population of children who've been abused, neglected, and involved in the system are being sent to Indianapolis, they're being sent out of county, they're being sent to southern Indiana, very far away from their families.
So they kind of got a double whammy. They've got really some mental disabilities, and then they've really come from a really tough background situation. So Brad, this idea of planning possibilities you started talking about, it's a greenhouse. It's kind of a business proposition. Can you tell us what that is?
Our business model is, we'd like to be self-sustaining to the point where 50% of our revenue would come from sales, and then some philanthropical, and then also government grants. So that's it's not something new. There's a couple other programs across the country that we've tapped into and looked into, and they've been very receptive to helping us get off the ground. There's one out in West Chicago, and then one down in Boca Raton, Florida.
So the idea is to produce vegetables and flowering plants, seedlings.
We're still working on developing that, but this year we started out with some tomatoes. It's been a very educational experience for myself. Never really was big on tomatoes, but this year was the first year I there's a
first
highlight
time in
there.
your life?
First, you can hide them in spaghetti sauces and other things, but actually Mark convinced me to eat one right off the vine. So.
Wow. So the idea was, you said, if we could create a greenhouse, grow plants, and resell these as kind of a retail operation, retail, wholesale, whatever, there's a work opportunity for my son and some of his friends.
Right.
Then what did you see in this?
Absolutely the same thing. These children need those skills. And as much as Work One does a fantastic job with the other children that we have on our campus, they can't meet the specific needs of this lower IQ disabled youth that we have in our program. So what's really sad is that when these children are in residential care, because of the lack of services, they're in care for 7 years, as opposed to other children in residential care, which is now under a year. So we really wanted to bring services closer to their homes, but we didn't want children to just be growing up in a residential facility. We wanted to make sure that from day one, from the moment we opened the program, that we were already thinking about what is it going to be like when these children are done with services here. We can treat the children, give them the skills they need to move on, and they need to be independent.
So this is about, for both of them, an opportunity to be productive, to do something that they feel good about, learn some skills that they can take past that point. Right? So how would this model work? I mean, you'd have adults in there working with them, supervising them? How does this work?
There's volunteer opportunities for both adults and students as well, or individuals as well. And then we're working with, partnering with Master Gardeners through the Purdue Extension. In fact, I went through the Master Gardeners program this summer. I figured I got to walk the walk and talk the talk and dig the dirt and all that stuff. So it's been a good partnership and a good learning experience.
Let's see your hands. Come on, let's see if
See
there's
the
still
nails?
dirt under the nails.
Oh,
You still got those
so,
there?
Whatever
He's
nails
eating
are
tomatoes
left.
and getting his hands dirty.
You know, I have to admit I ate my first tomato too, thanks
That's
to you.
effective.
Are you?
Effective.
So are you going to be getting your hands dirty in this?
Absolutely.
You're going to be out there in the dirt, playing in the dirt with everybody else?
I don't know about playing in the dirt, but I'll certainly be out there with the kids.
So the collaboration was, you have this idea and this business model, you have space. Is that the idea?
We do. We actually have 47 acres. Few people know how much space and land we have. We have 47 acres, and it wasn't a problem at all walking in, campus and finding a spot for a greenhouse.
So how much property could you guys dedicate to this? I mean, you could put 3, 5, 10 acres toward it if needed?
We're actually going to start with smaller space, with one. It's not a greenhouse, it's a hoop house.
Hoop house, yes.
So I'm learning these different terms.
Okay.
So it doesn't require a lot of space. We are going to have this right next to our school building, so there's going to be an educational component for the kids, and very close to the cottage that they live. So it's going to be part of their curriculum, about 2 hours a day. And the kids are already excited about it. They already know everything that they can. Showed them some of the pictures that you shared with us.
So what would they be doing? I mean,
We'll start off. We had a group this year that planted the seeds into the starter sets. Came over, kept documentation on how they grew, moved the lights on the as they started out, and then eventually transplanted them into the smaller pots, and then from there we eventually got involved with planting them out in the plots.
one of the neat things about this is the fact that you're going to have adults, a lot of volunteers working with this, which so sometimes you kind of got to wonder who's the therapy for it. Maybe really pretty good for these adults to be having experience with these kids too, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It exposes people in our community to a population of children and adults that are in need to be included.
Don't you find that most adults don't know how to relate to these kind of kids? They just kind of stand back and go.
I think they're very intimidated by it, and because they don't know it, they don't understand it, and it is quite intimidating, I think, for some people.
Yeah, that was basically the driving force behind that. When I moved back to Munster, I graduated from Munster, and when I went through school, there was very little interaction between that group. You know, they were in self-contained classrooms. If you did come across them, it was maybe in changing periods and that. And now with my son being in that group, I wanted him to be more engaged, and we started some programs at Munster and a couple of other high schools in the area called Best Buddies, where they're basically building a one-on-one friendship with people in the school. And we had another great call-out meeting this year where we had over, I think, 130 students come out.
So this opportunity then is for some of the other kids, even the 15, 16, 17-year-olds, to be able to help with this project. Do you envision that with some of your other kids at Campagna?
We actually have talked about that before, and that would be a wonderful opportunity for the other children to be mentor, be those big buddies, you know, for those children as well.
Which would create great self-esteem for both of them. So let me ask this. Your group is kind of 15, 16, 17, right in there,
yes,
correct?
About.
Are you talking about a little older group? Okay, so how does that work if you're kind of blending? I know these days everybody's like, oh, you can't put these kids with this age and so forth. How does that work if you're going to have little older ones, even 22 or 23, with these younger ones?
Well, we have children in residential care in various age groups. We started the program with just one cottage. It's 12 boys, high school aged. We're expanding the program for girls as well, and possibly a third cottage for younger boys. And what's really nice about Mark and Brad is that we've been able to tailor the program to meet the specific needs of the kids that are in the program today.
So the point is, these kids, all these kids have to learn to deal with different kinds of people, adults, at different ages and so forth. So that's part of the program. You got to learn to get along. Do you see your son working in this for a long time? Will this become a job for him?
I think so. It's his passion has always been to be outside, to mow, to do things with his hands, as opposed to being out, in a secluded area, just doing a repetitive job with very little interaction. The social side of it is what he loves.
Does that work for the kids who, I don't want to get my hands dirty, and I don't want to do this outside stuff?
You know what? I think that there might be that one or two children that may not want to do it, but they can always watch and be part of it in other ways. We have spaghetti dinners every 3 months at Campagna. The kids are already talking about making their own spaghetti sauce for those dinners.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
We talked about, and we joke about this, but we want to have pesto and basil with our tomatoes, and these kids are going to own it. It's going to be theirs, and I think this is their home. This is going to be their program, and we're thrilled.
I'm beginning to think this is more therapeutic for the two of you maybe than the kids.
We're enjoying it. We've been trying pesto recipes, and
I'm trying to get back out
my
into
first
society
tomato
there and make a nice entry into that.
So what can we're down to a couple minutes, so what can the general community do to maybe involve themselves or support this? What can they do, Brad?
Well, just be aware that these opportunities are out there. My envision is that we could have small, duplicatable things throughout all the communities here in Lake County.
So might be able to do more than
Because we have all these
just
individuals in all these different counties, so it's just, but most people don't know how to interact with them. Just like when I went through Munster, I didn't know, so when I did go out into the public, I didn't know how to react to those individuals. They have the same goals and same dreams as us.
So one of us, be aware that this exists, so there's an opportunity to plug in. What do you see that the general community could do to help and support this?
Visit Campagna, come by. We offer tours, they can visit with the children. We need volunteers. We need and rely on volunteers to make this work.
Okay. So those volunteers could be great, particularly with the greenhouse or the hoop house or whatever. And at some point, you'll be selling this stuff too, right? So we could get some people to buy it.
Our envision to have a culinary kitchen where the other students that prefer that as opposed to digging in the dirt can go and do that as well.
So a lot of volunteer opportunities for people to really plug into this thing and really help it grow, and which is why we call it, planting possibilities, right?
A lot of possibilities.
So, listen, I really appreciate you both being on the show here, and it sounds like a very exciting project. We need to keep an eye on it in the paper, and I hope the audience keep watching for it. And I'm going to be wanting to come over and taste what you guys make at some point.
We'll definitely be inviting you over.
All kinds of fancy heirloom tomatoes.
Okay.
We're already getting requests for.
All right.
They are fancy.
Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. It's quite easy and even somewhat fashionable for the older crowd to bash the younger crowd. You might hear some say, "These kids are lazy and only think of themselves. They don't know how to do anything. All they do is play games and listen to that terrible rap music. Why do they all get tattoos and pierce every part of their body?" Before we continue to condemn, let's take a short trip back to the 1960s, where we would hear adults say these kind of things. "These kids are lazy and only think of themselves. They don't know how to do anything. All they do is listen to loud rock music. Why do they all dress like hippies and grow long hair?" In fact, you could modify these remarks for the 50s, 70s, just about any decade. Although you can attribute much of youthful behavior to hormones and peer culture, the truth is that we adults still have a major impact on their lives during that coming of age period. We just don't provide enough opportunities. We won't go out of our way to connect, and we don't reinforce the values that we hold. We think they will not listen, appreciate, or gain anything from their time with us. Admit it, we're a little lazy and ultimately a little afraid. Kids or young people in general need time with adults. We should take them to places, offer work experiences, and participate where they are involved. We should show genuine interest in what they do, ask questions, and listen closely to their answers. One of the previous ministers at my church challenged our men and said, "Don't be scared of these kids. Go up to them and talk to them. Tell them to pull up their pants, help them find a job, and take them with you to meet other adults. Then they will learn how the world really works." Young people know when an adult really cares. Hey, older people, let's help these kids to become productive and involved, so when they become adults and are older, they can wonder, what's wrong with these kids? Thanks for watching our show. We'd like to hear your thoughts about what we had here today. How many of you out there are going to invest some time in a kid or offer them a work opportunity? Email your comments to focus@lakeshorepublicmedia.org or reach us through our website, which is listed on your screen. Join us next week for another Lakeshore Focus. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.